Welcome everyone, and thank you for attending today's webcast, AutoCAD Electrical PLC Modules. Our presenter today is Greg Fisher. He is a solutions engineer with Hagerman and Company. We're also joined on the line by Julia Grant. She is a senior technology strategist with Hagerman. She's going to be on the line to help field any questions as we go. Before we begin, I'll let you know that you are in listening only mode. If you have questions during the presentation, you can type those into the question panel, which is located on the right-hand side of your screen. And as I said, Julia will be on in the background to kind of field questions as we go, and there will be a Q&A session at the end as well. As we close down the session today, you'll be prompted to fill out a short survey, and we ask you to take a few moments to fill that out for us. Additionally, all registrants will receive a follow-up email tomorrow containing a link for the recording of today's presentation. And I'm going to go ahead and hand things over to Greg now.
Thank you, Ash.
Greg, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. So my name's Greg Fisher. I'll be doing the demonstration this morning. I decided to put this webinar together because there's not a lot of info out there about PLC module creation in general. And I'm going to demonstrate two different types, the parametric style and the fixed units. I'll create one of each, I'll insert it. And like I said, I think it's a good topic because there's, not a lot of information out there on how to create either one of these. I don't have a PowerPoint because I'm going to go right up till the time limit. So I'm not going to waste anybody's time with a PowerPoint. I'm going to jump right into the demo. And I'll do that right now. So I'm going to shut my camera off. And the first one I'm going to talk about are the parametric modules. As you know, we have two types of modules that we can use, a parametric and a full unit. When you go to the parametric, you have a large selections of manufacturers installed with the software, but anybody who has been using electrical, just because you see the manufacturer that you use doesn't necessarily mean it's going to have the particular module that you use. And this has always been a pet peeve of mine. If anybody's ever taken any of my classes or talked to me on the phone, this is absolutely not Autodesk's fault. I lay the blame squarely on the manufacturers. They should have them posted up on their website that you can download and insert immediately. As we all know, we're not there. So we end up having to create a lot of them. So how do we create a parametric one? I'm going to go to my other tools panel over here, and I'm going to select the PLC database file editor. And that is what is different between the parametric ones and the fixed unit. Fixed unit is more like a standard AutoCAD electrical component or block, if you will. The parametric ones uses a database. So basically you're configuring the module in the database, and as you insert it, as some of you probably know, the reason why we have the parametric is so you can break it apart. You can add more space between your IO points. So to start with, right now, I'm just defaulting. This was the last module I happened to insert. It's an Allen Bradley. I'm going to say new module. And I'm going to change the manufacturer to Acme. I'm going to change the series to a DI-0001. I'm going to make it a discrete input. For the code, I'm going to go 123-456-7C, I'll call it. For a description, 8-point input. Module type, we'll call it DI. For the base addressing, I'm going to leave it on prompt. Rating, I'll call it 120 VAC. Terminals, I'm going to go with a total of 11, but I'm only going to have 8 addressable points. All this information that you're filling in here can show up on the module when you insert it. And it's also used to organize all your modules. It's not just a catalog number in a parts database. You have a series, you have a code, you have a series type, so on and so forth. Down here, you have module box dimensions and module prompts. If I go to module box dimensions, a lot of people don't know this. You know how when you insert a parametric PLC module, they all look the same. It's a bunch of terminals with a rectangle around it. Well, you can modify some of those distances to create the rectangle bigger or smaller after you place it in. I'm not going to change anything there. Module prompts, these are just, they're extra attributes, if you will. So if I go to the %1 here, I might want this to say rack. So I type it in and pick change. 002, I'll go with slot and select change. I have up to 9 more prompts, anything else that I might want to add in. They're just more attributes that are eventually going to be part of the block. So at this point I can say okay. So I essentially have a bunch of blank terminals at this point. Pay attention to the number of rows. The rows are not your terminal numbers. They're just rows in the database here. And the next thing I have to do is define or configure each terminal. Now I have 11 rows, which means 11 terminals. Why do I have 11 terminals if I only have 8 inputs, let's say? The reason is, and I'm going to do this 2 different ways. I'm going to create it so when I insert it, I don't include extra terminals or unused terminals. And then I'm going to insert it with unused terminals, hence the extra rows. And that's the part that can get confusing because it has the ability to include unused or extra terminals when you insert it. When you set it up beforehand, it can get a little bit confusing at that point. So right now I'm going to right click inside this first row and I'm going to say edit terminal. And this is what you do. You define, the first terminal, let's say. And in this case, I want this to be the top input, let's say. And really you have the top terminals and you have every other terminal. You start at the top. It's either an input, an output, or a straight up terminal. If it's not the top terminal, then it's an input or output or a terminal that might go to your common, let's say. So I'm going to start with the top input and I want the module info to come along with it. That was essentially everything I just filled out. And as you can see, you have other choices on how this might get wired. It might be, you might have wires coming from both sides, if you will, or no connection at all. So you have all these different blocks that you can configure the module with, and that's the whole point here. So I'm going to pick OK here. And then what these other options are is the show option determines when you include unused or you exclude unused. So in this first example, I'm going to say when excluding unused terminals. You have an optional reprompt. So you could, at every single IO point, you could get prompted for the address, if you will. If it's a module you want to set up where you know you're going to break it at a certain point. A lot of times you insert a module and as you're inserting it, you decide to break it, or after you insert it, you decide to break it. You can configure it so it breaks as you insert it. And then you could also include an extra space factor. You can do the same thing with the spacing as you can with the break. So if you needed a little bit more real estate between inputs or outputs, you can include an additional spacing factor ahead of time instead of doing it on insert. So I'm going to go to the next row and do the same thing. I'm going to say edit, and then this time, excuse me, I'm going to choose top terminal. And I'm still going to use the module info with all with my connection point on the left there. And I'll pick OK. And then this time I'm going to say when including unused. No to the reprompt, not checking the break, no space as well. Now I'm going to right click inside this next cell and go to edit terminal once again. And this time I'm going to select input from my list. And I'll choose the input IO point wire left as well. And I'll pick OK. And then under show, I'm going to go back to when including unused. Leave everything else as the defaults. And then I'm going to take 4 through 10 and do all these at the same time, because these are always going to be straight up inputs. And then from here, once again, I'll go with the IO point, the connection point on the left, pick OK, and I'm going to leave these as always. And then the last one, I'm going to edit this terminal, and this is just going to be a straight up, oh, wait a minute, did I do that right? Yeah, that's right. This will be a straight up terminal. And I want this connection point to be on the right side because it's going to get tied to my comet. So at this point, I'm going to save the module. And I'm going to pick done. And now I'm going to go to my insert parametric PLC. Here's the one I just created. And I'll pick OK. I'll drop it in, let's say on the first wire. I'm going to make the spacing 1. And I'm not going to check the include extra. And I'll pick OK. There's the prompts that I placed in. Standard quick pick of addressing. I'll label it decimal. So everything is fine with this except one thing, and I did that purposely. Look at the terminal numbers. I didn't fill in any terminal numbers. I just let it take on the row default. So those are not the correct terminal numbers, obviously. Also, if I go back and insert the same one, and I'll just pop this out to the side somewhere. I'll go with my one spacing again. And this time I'm going to say include unused. And I'll pick OK. Rack, slot, pick an addressing scheme, select OK. And now this not only has the terminal issue, but notice none of my module info showed up here. And both of these are common mistakes, and that's why I did it purposely. So I'm going to undo this, the insertion of both of these. And then I'm going to go back to my PLC database editor. And if I look at the top row as an example, here's all the info that gets filled in. That's great. Terminal number is 1. I'm going to change the terminal number to 00. Now when I pick the next row, notice it's blank as far as the catalog number, the manufacturer, the tag, the rack and slot. So it filled everything in my initial row, but it didn't put everything in on the next one. Even though I said module info, terminal point, wire, left, it still didn't carry all that over. Not too big of a deal. I can come back here, and copy some of this, paste it in here. I can type it in here if I want. And if you remember, when I went to the module prompts, I changed 001 to rack, 002 to slot. That's why it automatically filled it in on the first line, but it doesn't copy it to the second line. Manufacturer is going to be Acme. Catalog number. Description, call it an 8-point input again. And then I'm going to change the terminal number on this one to A. Then I'm going to go down to the next row, and I'm going to change this terminal number to 00. And then we have 01, 02, 03, 4, 5, 6, 7. 5, come on. 6 and 7. And then my bottom one, I'll make this COM. So the modifications I made sure that when I include unused, that all the module info gets carried over, like the catalog number, the manufacturer, rack, slot, terminal number, so on and so forth. And then for the rest of them, you know, I just concentrated on the terminal numbers themselves. And notice that I haven't filled in the term description for each one. That's just another terminal label you can give it. As if you're using PLC modules right now, you know that as well. So I'm going to save the module, select done. And anytime you have to modify a module, you saw what I just did. You just go back to the PLC database editor, make the changes you want. If you ever see that save module, you know, ready to be pushed, you know you made changes to it. That's all there is to modifying your modules. So now I'm going to go back up and I'll insert another one. I'll do the same thing I did before. I'm not going to include the unused extra connections yet. Rack 1, slot 1, pick an addressing scheme. So now my terminal numbers are correct. I wasn't just picking up on the row numbers that are in the database file. And then I'll insert another one, this time including the unused. And I'll drop this out in the middle of nowhere once again. And I'll check include. And here's one thing that I was mentioning before. As you know, when you insert a parametric module, you can allow for spacers and breaks. You could have built in spacers into the module when you created it. You could have built in breaks into the module when you created it, so it does it automatically. Pick OK here. Addressing scheme. So now, as you can see, once again, I'm showing that extra terminal. I labeled it A, and then it picked back up on all my input terminals with the correct addressing. So like I said, where it can get confusing when you're creating your parametric modules is when you get into the excluding unused and including unused. And it can get confusing from a terminal number standpoint. And I've had people, you know, come back to me and say, you know, we're just of the mentality that we're never going to include unused terminals. That makes it even easier, right? Because if that's the case, this whole every row here under show would be set to always. You're always going to show it because they never include unused terminals. Other ones always do. So they build that within mind. So they wouldn't have a when excluding unused row. It would be straight, it would be all when including. So those are the types of things that you have to think about when you're building the parametric modules. You know, are you going to include or not include? And then once again, those terminal numbers are so important. Just usually you forget half the time because you get filling this stuff out, not paying attention to the info that's down here, and you just forget about it. Not a big deal. You can always go back and modify it like I just did. That's how we create the parametric ones. The only thing I didn't point out on either of these, and you might know this already, you have to edit the module before you can put in your description text. So I could call this, let's say, master control relay, click OK. You know, that's where it ends up in relation to the module itself. Okay, so those are parametric ones. Now I'm going to dive into the fixed unit ones. So I'm going to undo again. And fixed unit ones are more like a standard AutoCAD electrical block. Can't be modified, can't break it, can't add spaces. It is what it is. The problem is not a lot of info out there on how to create one from scratch, you know, by using the symbol builder. First and foremost, if you have existing AutoCAD blocks that you've used in the past to represent your I/O modules, do not throw them out. If you're going to go with fixed units, don't throw them out. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to insert a block that I created years ago that represents an 8-point input module. And then I'm going to essentially convert that to an AutoCAD Electrical Intelligent PLC input block in this case. So right now I'm going to go to my standard AutoCAD insert command. And I think this is still the one I want. And it is. So at this point, it's a straight up AutoCAD block. That's all it is. And then I'm going to explode the block. And then I'm going to make sure that all of my objects are on layer 0. And as you can see, they are, just like any other AutoCAD electrical block that you create. Now I'm going to do this two ways. I'm going to do it where I insert an existing fixed unit PLC module, and then I'll kind of do another one from scratch. So I'm going to go to my fixed unit 1, full unit, and I'm going to select 1-inch spacing because I have the 1-inch spacing on this module right here. So I'm going to take this and I'm just going to insert it, let's say over here, and I'm going to pick OK. Now I'm going to explode this one. And the reason why I like to do this is because it has all the attributes that I need, just from a pure attribute standpoint. So as an example, I'll start with the standard installation location, tag, all those attributes, and I'm just going to copy them. I could copy them or move them essentially, you know, from here to my module. And these attributes are essentially going to replace some of the information that you see in here, the plus 24 VDC input module, the manufacturer. So for the manufacturer, I'm going to make it default to Acme. For the catalog number, I'm going to type in DI-0001. Family code, I'm not going to change. I'm just pointing out the family code, what the family code is for PLC modules. It's PLC. Tag is also going to default to PLC. The line 1 and the line 2, these are just kind of extra attributes. I can fill those in when I insert the module. The description, let's say this is an 8-point 24 VDC input module. Now the next key here is, and you're going to see a pattern if you've never done this, The first connection point has the standard, connection point attributes, the X4 terminal 1, the terminal 1 for the terminal number. The tag A01 here is the address attribute when I insert it. And then it has 3 lines of description. You have up to 5. This particular one, and that's all I'm going to use, is going to be limited to 3. But you're going to see a pattern here. Term 02, tag A02, description A02, B02, C02. Next one down. Tag A03, term 03, description A, B, C03. So when you're creating a new module out of an existing one, you want to make sure that you use all of these attributes and they follow the same pattern. So I'm going to do this a couple different ways. I'm going to copy all these attributes over to my, and here's 6 of them as an example. And I'll pick these, 6 here. And then I also obviously need the connection point attributes. Whoop. Let me unselect that. So I'm going to take all of these and I'm going to copy them over to my symbol that I'm going to create. And then obviously from here, and you have to do that 9 times out of 10 when you're creating a symbol from scratch anyway, and that is changing justifications, changing positions of some of these attributes. We have to do it all the time when we create a symbol using the symbol builder, let's say. So as an example, I'm going to take all these description attributes to start with. I'm going to go to properties, and I'm going to change the justification to left justified because I'm going to move them over to the left. So if I go to my move command right now, this is going to be an input module. So I have to leave a little bit of space where a wire is going to pass through there. And then each one of these, first thing I'm going to do is change the default terminal number to match up with what my existing one is. So for the terminal 1 as an example, I'm going to do 2 things here. Can't do 2 things at once though. I'm going to change each one of these so they default to the proper terminal number. This will be 3, 4, 5, 6. So at this point, I can go ahead and delete the original terminal numbers. These are just text at this point from an old AutoCAD block. I need to make it a smart attribute, which I just did with those terminal numbers. So now I'm going to change the justification and the text type for each one of these. I'm going to make this center justified, and I'm going to make it my standard 0.125 text type. Excuse me. And now I'm going to move these to the top of the terminal. And I'll do it from the insertion point to make it just above the terminal. Excuse me. So the last ones I need to move and modify are the address attributes. That's the tag A01, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm going to change the justification to straight up, right. And I'm going to move these now from the insertion point once again. And then I'm going to take this and kind of put it outside the box right about here is good. So I'm almost done at this point. The other thing I have to do, because I only copied 6 from the other one, because another technique you can use, let me get rid of 7 and 8 right now, is you could put, one of these in, copy them, and then modify the attribute text as well. So as an example, let's say I copy this one, the connection point, and my descriptions. And I'm going to copy them from here to here to here. So then I need to modify this so it says tag A07. Terminal 7. Terminal number is going to default to 7. Connection point needs to be 7. Descriptions A, B, and C need to be 7. And then the same thing with the next one. This will be 8. And notice as well, I gotta do that too. And that is the default for the tags. I'm going to show you what I do there in a minute. And this will be terminal number 8, connection point 8, and then descriptions A, B, and C will be 8 as well. Now the tag attributes, that's what becomes the addressing. When you build one of these, like I'm doing here, the tag default to an address, in this case of I/9. If you know what the address scheme is going to be for this module, you can pre-plug it in. So it shows up as is as soon as you insert it. You know how I was picking from a list of addresses? You can add to that list from the environment file, or you can just type in whatever you want when you insert the module. But you can also build it so the addressing is already there, but addressing schemes change. That's why they usually give you the option. I'm going to delete mine altogether. I don't need a default. And I'm going to do that for each one of these. 3, 4, and you'll see in a minute when I insert it here what it's going to look like. So at this point, I'm done. Now I need to go, let me get rid of this stuff here. And I'll move these attributes into the area where that just was. So in this particular method that I'm doing, I'm basically building the module before I even go into the symbol builder. I'm still going to go to the symbol builder. I got one more connection point that I want to put in, but I did the work ahead of time. So if I go to the symbol builder right now, I'm a big fan of the symbol builder. Select objects, wrap a window around everything here. Insertion point, I usually like to put it, you can put it anywhere you want, obviously. I like to put it wherever my first connection point is. It's going to be a horizontal parent as far as the symbol category. And there is no PLC type, so I'm going to leave it as generic. And I'll pick OK. So all my attributes, manufactured, catalog, installation, location, all of my terminals, already done, already filled in, taken care of. I could also use a rating attribute, maybe to represent the voltage or something else on the module, or a number of rating attributes if I wanted to. The only thing left I have right now is to give this a connection point. And this is going to be just a standard left none. I don't need the tag A, I don't need the descriptions. I'll drop this one down right here. We'll get rid of the number 9. I'll change the default here to 9. Or let's say I'll make it common just to change it up. And then I'll change the properties this time once again to a center justification. And then I'll move it with my grip to above terminal, just like the rest of them. So now at this point, I'm going to go to my symbol builder tab up top and say done. Now the key here, you might want to write this one down. And that is the symbol naming convention. The only symbol, what is different about the PLC symbol naming convention than it is for everything else is the first 5 characters, PLCIO. There's the symbol naming convention right there. After that, you can call it anything you want. I'm going to call this one DI-0001. I have a couple other ones in here, so I'll give this an _3. I don't care what shows up in my unique identifier. That's my symbol name. PLC symbol naming convention has to start with PLCIO. Doesn't have to be an underscore after it like we do with all the other symbols. It can be anything you want. Then it's just a matter of where do you want to store it? I'm going to put this. I've created this folder, and I'll put the image file in the same place. Says I have 5 errors. I don't worry usually too much about the errors because these are not required. I could have put these in. I didn't. In the insertion point, it is actually in line with the wire connection. So I'm going to pick OK. Oops. That's weird. I didn't even see that it didn't automatically make this the same name. Usually it does. Sure, let's insert one. Now I'm going to insert this Obviously, the module looks a little bit different than the original one I placed down. I'm going to drop it down, let's say, right about here. Remember, I left all the addressing blank. I'm going to fill one in, hit enter, go decimal, and it fills all the other ones in automatically. You know, here's the line 1 and line 2 information. Maybe I call this 24 VDC input and then module. I'll give it a location code like you normally do. And I'll type in the first couple of lines again, just to test where my text ends up. So to clean this up, obviously I'm going to get rid of these. But there's my standard full unit. Can't break up a full unit, can't add spacers. But once again, it's about graphics. People pick to choose full units because they like the graphics. This has some heavy graphics in it, as you can see. Whereas the parametric ones, they use the database. It's not about graphics, it's about flexibility. Being able to break a module, be able to add spacers. There's no right or wrong for either method. Ultimately, it still comes down to your addressing and your descriptions. Now, the other way you can go about creating a full unit one. Let me get rid of this stuff. Is to go directly to the symbol builder itself. Well, actually, let me do this first. So obviously we don't have a whole lot of time, especially right now, we don't have a whole lot of time left. I'm going to go to my home tab and I'm going to draw a rectangle. And I'm just going to put it out here, yay big. Hypothetically speaking, let's say I just drew, you know, a whole bunch of graphics to make this thing look really nice. Now, the only thing I'm going to steal from the previous block that I created is the installation location, all that good stuff. So let me copy these attributes just to save time. And I'll copy them over to here. Get rid of that. So at the very least, it's got my family code correct. It's got the manufacturer I want to use, blah, blah, blah. So now I'm going to go back to my symbol builder. I'll say select objects. Select them. Pick a point for the insertion. I don't have any terminal on here or anything right now to represent where it's going to go, so I'm just going to kind of randomly pick an insertion point of like right there. It's going to be horizontal parent just like before. It's going to be generic just like before. So I've got all these standard ones, right? Now I need some connection points. To add the connection points for a PLC modules, you go to others here. And then under configuration, you go up here and you select fixed PLC. And then there's all those attributes that I previously had copied from the one module, the Allen Bradley module, into my Acme module. Here they all are. And it also has an extra terminal description as well, like I talked about with the parametric one. So it has all the attributes. And the first one I'm going to do is I'm just going to insert one at a time. So I'll pick insert right here. So there's the connection point. Again, normally I'd be worried about graphics, where this stuff ends up. To save some time, I'm just going to drop it in right here. Then I'm going to go right back to others. And I'll go right back to the fixed PLC. I'm going to add the rest of them all at the same time now. So I need 7 more. And I want the row offset to be -1. And I'm going to pick insert. Now I'm placing the rest of them down, line them up, space them, again. So I've put the rest of them down. Notice these only have 2 lines of description that comes in. You could add the third just by copying, description B01 and changing it to C01, and the same with 02, 3, 4, so on and so forth. The only thing I'm going to do here is change this once again to left justified and move them over to the left. So obviously, I didn't put a whole lot of graphics in here. I just drew a rectangle to save time. But if you want to use the symbol builder to put all your connection points down, which will include the addressing and the descriptions, you just have to make sure that you go to other here and you choose under the terminal style the fixed PLC. And when you're doing this for real as well, you can set up any of the attributes ahead of time with your proper justification, terminal height, and all that, if you know what it's going to be. Or you do what I did, is you insert it first and change it after. So that's what they don't tell you a whole lot, is to where to find those connection points when you're inserting them like I am. So the last one, I'm just going to throw down a common, if you will. I'll change this to write none. And I could copy some graphics of one of those terminals over to here, again, to save some time. I'm just going to say insert the wire connection, and I'll just drop it down, let's say, over here. So now at this point, I can say done once again. And then the same rules apply as far as the symbol naming convention for PLC modules is concerned. First five characters, PLCIO. PLCIO, PLCIO. That time it actually changed it. I'll save this in the same spot, my folder for this webinar. And I'll put the image file in the same spot as well. Pick OK. Sure, let's test this one. Running out of space here. It doesn't matter. I can put it wherever I want. Here's the whole point. Notice that the address, they just defaulted to that I/9 where I left mine blank. You can still type in, whatever you want. Hit enter, decimal, go back and edit it, and they all follow suit. I've got, again, I could fill in these lines of information with whatever I want, descriptions. Location code. I didn't default any terminal numbers, so I could fill these in. Now, that's one you probably should. When you were creating the attributes or after you inserted the connection point attributes, you should probably have a default pin or terminal number. If I go to show edit miscellaneous, there's where the extra terminal descriptions come into play. I pick OK here. Where did that go? Number 1. There it is. So like I said, I probably should have defaulted to what those were. I just left them blank. But the main point I was trying to make with this one is when you go to the symbol builder for the connection points, make sure you pick other and then the fixed PLC style. So one of the biggest things to take away from these full units, symbol naming convention. Start it with PLCIO. With the parametric, it creates the symbol name for you after you insert it. It basically creates a block on the fly, and the symbol naming convention is the same thing. The first 5 characters will be PLCIO. Okay. That does it for me. I don't know how Julie's doing on the questions.
I've got a couple here. First is, the video will be available. Ashley will be sending out an email with a link that please share with anybody that you want. The next question is, how do we share created blocks on our network? I think that's been a huge question a long time. Greg, you might want to get into this, but basically it's all about the environment file and pointing those specific paths up to your network and then sharing that file. Want to say anything else about that, Greg?
Yeah, I mean, that's done either when you install the software or, like Julie says, when you change the environment file after the fact. The other one you want to be concerned with that you also share, though, as far as PLCs are concerned, is the PLC database, that ace_plc.mdb. You want to share that as well. So, as soon as one person makes a parametric PLC module, it's immediately available for everybody. The same reason why you should be putting your own custom libraries up there and your own custom circuits up there. If you have multiple people working in a department, you don't want everything pointing local and everybody using their own.
Absolutely, and a shameless plug is that we have developed a connection app because the environment file is not very easy to handle or deal with. So, get a hold of us or your account manager to take a look at that environment file editor. The next one was the spacing between terminals on the Acme module already the same as those on the exploded block, or did some scaling have to occur?
No, it was the same, because when I was doing this for a living, when I would create a module, I just preferred 1-inch spacing. I have good drafting habits, so I knew everything was 1-inch spacing on that. Everything was on snap. So when I inserted the Allen Bradley one, I made sure I chose the 1-inch spacing on the Allen Bradley one, because as you know, there's the 1/2-inch spacing, the 3/4, and the 1. So yes, I did know ahead of time that was going to be 1-inch spacing apart.
Good. Any other questions? That's all we have on the panel.
Well, that's pretty good. Only 4 questions. Wow. I like it.
You did a great job. So Ashley, I think we're going to turn it back over to you.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Greg, for the presentation. Let's see here. I'll just let everyone know that if you think of additional questions later, you can always reply to that GoToWebinar confirmation or reminder email, and we can get those to Greg or your sales rep to get your questions answered. Once again, you will receive an email tomorrow with a link for the recording of today's presentation. And also, as we close down today, a short survey will pop up. And that's all I've got. So I think we'll close. Have a great day, everyone, and thank you for attending.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Have a great one.